Blue Jays, baseball and more baseball.
So I just keep getting further and further east from you, buddy. Coming to you from Charlottetown, PEI, Prince Edward Island. Right? And
is it my
I've
bad
got
breath?
decent
Is that
internet.
what it is?
What's that?
I said, is it my bad breath? Is that what it is?
That's right. The further I can get, the better we are at.
You got good internet, though. You got good internet today.
I got good internet. We're ready to roll. Shows today in Alberton, PEI. So I head east on the island here, and then I head to Ottawa next weekend to play Laugh Lounge Comedy Club. So anyone in Ottawa, feel free to get your tickets. I know it was kind of cool. I was up in Glace Bay, Cape Breton last weekend, and got messages from, I think it's Brent Mack, in the Discord, and he was like, oh my God, man, I can't believe I missed this. I'm literally 4 blocks from that bar. I never thought you'd come to Cape Breton. So I've been told by several people I need to be more forthcoming with my dates and where I'll be. So
yes, I know
Alberton,
you
PEI
hate
this weekend.
self-promoting, but
I do.
Yes, this is important. You're not doing it for you, Scott. You're doing it for everyone else. So keep that in mind.
Very selfless way to put it. Thank you, Adam.
There you go.
Welcome, everybody, to the Walk-Off. I'm Scott Belford, joined as always by the best co-host in the biz, Adam Mack.
Hello.
Trade deadline, buddy. It is right around the corner now. This weekend should be a busy one, and we're very lucky. We're going to have, from MLB.com, Toronto Blue Jays reporter Keegan Matheson joining us on Wednesday to break down everything that happens leading up to that Tuesday deadline. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It should be fun. And then also, we're doing a little live mailbag for a few hours where we're going to have a few folks drop in. I know we had our good buddy and long toss aficionado Garth reach out and was like, hey, buddy, if you need anybody to come on for 30 minutes to 60 minutes, I'd love to do some time.
Nice.
I know we've had a few reach out saying the same sort of thing. So I think we should have a good few hours of trade deadline, chat, mailbag, comments, all that sort of good stuff.
Very good. It'll be a good time. I'm sure, that being said, we are recording this at, I guess, noon Eastern time.
Yes.
And I'm sure by the time this goes up in 45 minutes, it'll be outdated. There will be breaking news already because that's the way it goes, right?
Oh, the rumor mill is happening, and I love to see it. So you can follow us on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast, on Instagram, the Walk Off Podcast. Our Discord continues to grow. I know we've since the mailbag added, I think, 3 or 4 new members there. You can do so by following the link in the show notes, and that is always free, and quite a little hustling and bustling Blue Jays community in there.
Yeah.
Patreon. I want to talk Patreon for a second here. So let's start with just the list of names and a thank you to everyone who's already involved.
Yes, sir. So patreon.com/the Walk-Off Podcast. We've got David, Avraham, Michael, Sarah, John, Simon, Rashid, Joshua, Jeremy, Ian, Dunedin, Bob, John, and Wyatt have all joined and supported us on Patreon. So big thank you there. We have movie reviews. We have behind the scenes stuff. We have series previews, little primers for every series all year long. Early access to all of our interviews, unedited, and contests for things like this Jose Barrios jersey behind me. We have 2 entries in so far. So if you are on the Patreon and you're hearing this, be sure to get your name in the
right now. The odds are looking good. Yeah,
good odds in your favor. All you got to do is shoot us a DM on Patreon and just let us know why you want this jersey. Good reason or bad reason, I don't really care, but it can't be a raffle for like gambling reasons, I think is what Patreon says. But if it's a contest, so we have to technically run it as a contest. So just tell us why, and then we'll judge the best answer. But there you go. So that's the contest.
So we've had something really cool happen over the last 3 days that I am pretty humbled by, a little blown away. It feels weird, I'll be very honest. So Adam and I brought up the fact that we are putting all of our Patreon, or 95% of it, the other 5% going to Jay's Care, but 95% of it we're putting towards a new computer system for Adam so that we can give you a better product. so that the computer can do more. Adam has the spec sheet there. It's an estimate. And we were saying that it's about $1,400. We had $135 from Patreon that we were putting towards it, and that we were around the 10%. Well, from that point until now, we have had numerous people reach out and generously donate as much as like $200 to this. We are now almost at 35% the way there to this new computer in 3 days. And like, I don't even know what to say, but thank you so much to everyone.
Yeah,
we didn't ask for this. This was all like, I couldn't get over the fact that there were so many of you, like literally half a dozen plus that reached out with donations anywhere, again, from as high as 200 to even just doubling up on Patreon.
Yeah, throw in
and sending another $4
our way. We did get a suggestion that we start a GoFundMe because there's a few people who are like, well, we don't know how, like, Patreon only takes your monthly subscription. There's no way that you can put forward an extra lump sum if you choose to throw an extra donation on top or contribution or however you want to word it. Scott and I don't know if GoFundMe is the right thing for us.
No.
It feels like that's reserved for like college funds for orphans and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not. Like I know there's a lot of stuff that gets funded, books and video games and whatever, through Kickstarters and all that stuff. Scott and I don't know what we're doing, but anyways, people have reached out and we just wanted to acknowledge that we appreciate the support, the $5 donations, the $20 donations, the $100 donations, all of it really has been just quite humbling so far. The whole point of us bringing it up was just that we wanted to keep everybody in the loop, as we always do, on kind of what the short and long-term goals are for this show. And upgrading our system will upgrade your experience, and that's the best way we can go about doing it. So as of today, we are at 32.8% of the way towards our target goal of $14.85, which again is just an estimate. So whatever. But when
to
we
go
hit that,
from 9% on Tuesday to 33, anyways, I just so
bananas.
blown away. And again, thank you to everyone in the walk-off community. You're all a bunch of gems. But we got a big show to get to here, so let's not spend too much time on all the housekeeping.
Okay.
Kikuchi's return last night, I think it's pretty safe to say that was a success, my dude. So we'll talk last night's game. George Springer is feeling discomfort in his elbow. And we don't know much, but what we do know, we will pass along. The $300 million renovation to the Rogers Center has been revealed as of yesterday. What's going to happen to the center is now public knowledge, so we'll talk that. With these renos, Rogers Center has announced that they are bidding for the 2026 All-Star Game, so we'll talk that a little bit. Gabriel Moreno, buddy, went from the number 6 prospect, according to Baseball America, to numero uno, which we haven't had a number 1 prospect since Vladdy, and that worked out pretty well. Speaking of Gabriel Moreno, a little wrinkle in Buffalo yesterday is both Jordan Groshans and Gabriel Moreno, the number 1 prospect in the Blue Jays system, and then, of course, Groshans, the number 4 prospect, out of the Buffalo Bison lineup. And as if that's not intriguing enough, Aroldis Martinez was put at DH for the New Hampshire Fisher Cats last night. Does that mean anything? Is there a trade on the way, or was it all coincidence? We'll get into it. NL MVP candidates Goldschmidt and Arenado did not make the trek to Toronto, and I know you brought up an interesting little thought of if this winds up costing the Cardinals a playoff spot by 1 game, should they even be considered as NL MVPs? We'll get into it. Terrible news on the Mike Trout front. Looks like he will be battling injuries for the rest of his career. We'll talk about that diagnosis, and then we're going to end with a little Albert Pujols appreciation.
So you say
Lots to talk
Kikuchi.
about.
We don't need to trade for Luis Castillo anymore, right? We've got Yusei Kikuchi in prime form. We're good. We're set at the pitching position now. We can focus on Juan Soto. Is that the takeaway from last night?
He did have a good return, 67 pitches throw-in, 5 innings of work, 1 walk, 5 Ks. He looked pretty good, honestly. He was locating that 97-mile-an-hour fastball, which is always a good thing to see. He's always kind of shied away from that. His slider looked good. I mean, I think we're both in the same boat here, Adam, as this changes absolutely nothing for what is needed to be done before the trade deadline, correct? You feel that way, right? This doesn't change the needle?
No, not at all. Not even a little bit.
I mean, it's great. I love seeing Kikuchi go out there and perform. It was against the Detroit Tigers. They eased him in, only 67 pitches. But he has been retooling and reworking his delivery in Buffalo for the last 23 days. He was put on the IL, more of a let's give him a reason to be able to be sent down to AAA and work on some stuff, I think, than any actual injury. Of course, the Blue Jays keep that information pretty close to their vest, but any fan with a brain pretty much saw that as the writing on the wall of just a way to manipulate the ability to move him down and bring up somebody else, right, to fill the hole.
Yes.
It was... So he gave up a long ball, something that he is prone to doing, but he only gave up one. He didn't look incredible. But you give up 1 run over 5 innings, you can't ask much more of a guy. It's going to be a more interesting test when he needs to pitch against the Rays next series. But for now, I think we're just happy with where he's at, right? Like... Little positives here?
Well, okay, let's say he's our number 5 pitcher the rest of the way, right? We've got August and September. That's 2 months, so like 60-ish games, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to be he's
6
going to have
to 8
12
starts.
Well, I was going to say 12. Is my math off on that?
Well,
Yeah.
2 months.
60
I don't know.
60 divided by 5 would be 12. Anyways, let's say 12 starts. Let's say I'm right with the math.
Yes.
And he's our number
God,
5.
That feels like a lot of starts. For you say Kikuchi.
I know you're hoping 6 to
Damn
8.
math. Math is always my enemy on this side.
If Kikuchi gives us, out of 12 possibilities, he gives us 10 starts like yesterday, that's an absolute victory, right? Like
100%.
Sure, he gave up 1 home run, 1 earned run. Was it 5 innings that he went?
5 innings, 67 pitches. You could tell that they were very concerned about putting him back out there for a third time through the order. I don't think that there was a pitch count.
No, I don't think so either.
Limit.
I don't think so either. But I mean, 5 Ks over 5 innings, 1 walk. I think that's for your number 5
It's a good,
guy.
successful return.
It's great.
Success, right?
Like,
yeah.
I envision a world in which we add Luis Castillo or Rodon or whoever, right? And all of a sudden,
Lopez,
our top
whoever,
4 is Montes, let's just say, Manoah, Gossman, Barrios, and then Kikuchi is like a serviceable 5. And then we can put Stripling back in the bullpen to be like a proper long man. To come in 12 more times when Kikuchi's pitching.
So I want to bounce something off you here, Adam,
Okay.
because there's a lot of talk on Blue Jays Twitter that a lot of folks would rather see Kikuchi go to the bullpen over Stripling. That's kind of straight up silly, right?
Well, look, here's the thing. Stripling is probably a better starter than Kikuchi, yes. Right? So if we're only looking at the first 5 innings of a game, yeah, I would rather have Stripling be a starting pitcher for 12 more starts, right? But out of the bullpen, I got like 0 confidence that Kikuchi can do what Stripling does out of the bullpen. So, like, no, thank you.
My biggest problem with Kikuchi out of the bullpen is he has proven time and time again throughout this year and throughout his career that the first inning that he is in a ball game is always the most difficult difficult inning for him, and that's when he gives up his hits. That's when he struggles to locate his pitches. Can he change his mentality coming out of the bullpen to be more shut down? I mean, you're asking a lot out of a 31-year-old guy who is just struggling to find his stride in a position that he's already comfortable in. I would much rather see Ross Stripling, a proven bullpen piece, be sent down. And at least that way, if Kikuchi is struggling and you need to pull him at 1.5 innings, you've got a guy that you can go to in Stripling. Whereas if it's the other way around and Ross Stripling puts in 4 great innings, he allows 1 run, and now it's going to the 3rd time through the order, and the Blue Jays don't particularly like to see Stripling face that opposing batting order more than twice. Do you want to see Yusei Kikuchi coming out in the 5th? I sure the hell don't.
No, not at all. That feels like you're donating 3 runs to the other team in that inning. So, yeah.
And you don't want to stash him in the bullpen. Like, you don't want to just put him there and not work him. He's making too much money for that. And I know, you kind of got to bite the bullet on that because this is a contending team. And I think the Blue Jays are prepared to do that from the starting rotation. But I don't think that they're prepared to put him in the bullpen, a guy who's making $16 million this year. And it is a front-loaded contract. He is only making $10 million the next 2 years. And maybe he is a movable contract at this point once we get through 2022 season. But I think this is a problem for the offseason. I don't think this is something that you mess with right now. You go out in the trade deadline and bolster that rotation with some depth, whether it's a lower-end guy that's just going to fill in that number 4 hole, or whether it's a more substantial piece. Either way, I think it's Stripling you want in the bullpen over Kikuchi.
Agreed.
Okay, last night's game, the offense was provided by one Matt Chapman, who truly has really found it offensively since about June. And this is an interesting subject, Matt Chapman, because even off the top of the season, his peripheral analytics showed that he was actually getting pretty unlucky with where he was hitting the ball. His exit velo was great. His barrel rate was great. He was still hitting the ball all over the field, and he did have some long balls still, right? He was still putting up some home runs. But, man, the guy is nails right now. 2 dingers last night. I know you've got his stats up here over the last couple months. How does it look?
Okay, so if we go back 5 weeks to June 25th, Matt Chapman's stats, and let me pull them up for anybody watching on YouTube here. Matt Chapman, through the last 27 games, has 9 home runs, good for 24 RBIs, has a batting average of .316, and a slugging percentage of .653. With an OPS of 737. Good for an OPS of 1.026.
I mean, these are the numbers that got him MVP votes in 2018.
Yep. As it stands today, he is second on the home run list for the Toronto Blue Jays. Vladdy has 21, Matt Chapman and George Springer both have 18. So
9 of which have come over the last 27 games for Matt Chapman. He has really seemed to have found his swing. He looks so much more confident. He is putting up numbers right now and fielding in a way that I'm like, maybe the Blue Jays do try to sign him. Am I like, I don't want to jump off the deep end here because I know that the plan was to have him for a couple of years and then maybe Jordan Groshans is the guy you're looking to.
Look,
but what if Jordan Groshans is packaged?
Look, I was just going to say, he is going to be a great third baseman for the Washington Nationals. Okay? No, I mean, I was really excited by the trade for Matt Chapman. We gave up a lot of prospects to get him. Obviously, platinum glove at third base.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, and we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but the advanced metrics on his defensive performances would say that he's not a good third baseman this year. I'm not buying it.
Nope.
He's been as elite as ever. And now, like, we knew that he was bringing 30 home run potential to this lineup. Slow start, sure, like you said. Some bad luck. The exit velo off the bat was there. Some bad luck. And now it's starting to turn around. Like,
he's still on pace to be right around that 30 home run mark again.
Yeah. So, and he's hitting out of the 7 hole on this team. Like, there's no days off when you're pitching against this lineup when Matt Chapman is hitting there at 7, and then Danny Jansen is doing what he's do out of the number 9 slot. Like, I know Jansen's stats are down because he's missed so much time this year, but like, if you've got a healthy Danny Jansen hitting home runs out of 9 and a healthy Matt Chapman doing what he's doing lately out of the 7 spot.
With Espinal getting on base between them, I mean, that is a pretty deadly 7 through 9. And I know it's something that has been talked about a little bit more in the last week or two amongst Blue Jays analysts, and just MLB enthusiasts in general have kind of noticed how strong this back end of the batting order has been for the Blue Jays. But it really does make it so much more difficult on the starting pitching for other organizations to come in and just never have that moment where they can just be like, okay, here's an out. I just need to do my thing, right?
Yep.
It's a pretty deadly lineup, and this is what Blue Jays fans envisioned right from the start of the season, and it's nice to kind of see it starting to come to fruition. Now, the bad news, and there is some bad news here, George Springer, and anyone who was watching the game yesterday, obviously concerned about what they saw. He is laboring heavily whenever he is using that right elbow, his power arm, his throwing arm. We watched him throw a ball in from center field, and he grimaced mighty heavily. We watched him take an at-bat after that throw, where I was like, after seeing it, I'm like, okay, they're pulling him. And then, of course, they did. Pulled him in the 8th inning. If you're Ross Atkins, do you think about maybe putting George Springer on the 10-day IL and trying to get this man healthy as the playoffs approach? I know they're still in a big battle for the wild card spot, and giving time off to your leadoff guy, who is one of the best leadoff men in all of baseball and definitely one of the major cogs to your offense, is not ideal. But it is probably better for that man to be healthy in the playoffs than it is for him to be playing right now.
I mean, yeah, I can't argue with that we need him come September, October more than we need him now. It is a tough stretch of games coming up, though.
It is. We've got 3 more against Detroit, but then 2 against
2 in
the
Tampa,
Rays.
4 against the Twins, and then 3 against the Baltimore Orioles, who are better than the Red Sox all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. They're above 500.
Above 500 team, yes. Does this change the way this front office approaches the trade deadline? Is it more likely we see a guy like Ian Happ brought into the fold? I know there's all of these rumors constantly surrounding Happ and the Jays and the Cubs in talk. Because there's not a lot of depth in the minor leagues for outfielders, right? Like, we're talking a Nathan Lukes or a Samad Taylor probably, which isn't ideal.
No, it's definitely not ideal. Yeesh. It's rough, Scott. It is.
It is
concerning. It would be an understatement. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm just looking at the schedule here. So we got this tough stretch: Tampa Bay, Twins, Baltimore, and then we got the Guardians, who's a playoff team. We're in contention for a playoff spot, but then it's right back to Baltimore, and then the Yankees for 4. Like,
there's no off days. Like, that's
no
the
off
thing,
days.
right? And when I say that, by the way, there are off days throughout this schedule. It's not near as hectic as it was at the beginning of the season. But when I say no off days, I mean, there's no days.
Yes. Scott, did I lose you again? No. Scott was bragging that he had good internet, and now we've lost him. We've lost Scott. Panic. I'm hitting the panic button. We're going to stop this recording right here, and we're going to reboot it as soon as Scott's back. Thank you.
And we're back. Sorry about that, gang. Right in the middle of all this Springer talk and whether we need to increase our outfield depth, and then out goes my internet after I'd already mentioned
How good your internet was.
that I have good internet. Yes. One thing I did want to bring up about the outfield is Raimel Tapia enough? He's looked very good since mid-May.
Okay. This is a really interesting question, Scott, because he's played quite a bit, right? Mm-hmm. We've gotten to see quite a bit of him in the outfield, on the base path, in the batter's box. Is Raimel Tapia enough? I'm going to flip this on you with another question and say, is Bradley Zimmer enough to play as much as we see Raimel Tapia? Because that is the downside,
the danger here.
If we don't, if Springer's out and we don't replace him, I'm comfortable with Tapia filling in for George. I am not comfortable seeing Bradley Zimmer as much as I see Raimel Tapia.
No, we cannot have Zimmer in this lineup 4 out of 5 games, and that is a really good point. So I think that just answered the question that absolutely outfield depth is now a very big need. It's a necessity at the trade deadline. And I don't think they need to go out and get a stud, but also if Juan Soto comes our way, who's saying no, right?
There you go.
Okay. Did you have anything else to add on this before we get into the Rogers Center?
No, let's talk Rogers Center.
Okay. So just yesterday, Mark Shapiro had a press conference where he announced all of the upgrades that are going to happen with the Rogers Center. And some of them are pretty darn cool. I don't know if you saw all of them, Adam, but the first phase, so this is from Arden Zwelling, friend of the show, always gives all sorts of love to us here on the Walk-Off. He's been on 4 times now, and he says, here are renderings of Blue Jays' upcoming Rogers Center renovations. First phase of multi-year $300 million project will address stadium's outfield this winter. Of note, raised bullpens, realigned outfield walls with a new 5,000 square foot weight room beneath the surface. What does that mean? Beneath the surface of the earth?
Yes.
We're doing tunneling down into a weight room for the boys. Honestly, man, the raised bullpen is pretty darn exciting. I know that I went and watched that Yankee series in Toronto, and we were kind of sitting in left field behind the bullpen there. And my goodness, dude, if that's raised up like they do in Boston, that is going to be fun as a fan to kind of get in there and jaw a little bit at the opposing pitchers warming up in the pen, which is actually something Mark Shapiro brought up when he mentioned the raised bullpen. He's like, you just know the fans are going to be able to encourage our pitchers and, maybe discourage opposing pitchers.
Polite way of putting it. Overall,
the outfield wall reconfiguration is something that made me think of you instantly, too.
Yes, I've been annoyed with this since this was first a topic of discussion. Very generic outfield wall as it currently stands right now at the Rogers Center. Symmetrical. It is rounded almost the entire way around. Very generic. No features, no knickknacks. When you think of other stadiums, you look at it from the top down, and they have very distinct footprints. And that's always been a complaint of mine with the Rogers Center. Very simple, very boring. Not anymore.
No, the mock-up is very cool, actually.
So I am showing it here on the on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube. We have what I've been referring to as the Bullpen Bulge.
Yes.
Where it is, instead of being a rounded out, it almost is like concave in for each of the bullpens. It is a little
and left field, right?
Right and left field, yeah. It is a little asymmetrical because the left field bullpen is closer to the pole than the right field bullpen is, which is probably, 30, 40 feet off the pole, whereas left field is like 5-10 feet off the pole. So it is a little asymmetrical. Wall height, I would say, is my biggest complaint. It's still too high. I don't get it.
Well, this is what they're doing. So where they're bringing the bullpen into the field a little bit. So they're shortening up the outfield. To make up for that, they're raising the walls of this raised bullpen. But to make sure that Adam Mack is a little bit happy, what they have done is in the center field area between the two bullpens, they've lowered the wall from 10 feet. I think it's marked at 7 feet, which is going to be able to steal some home runs to dead center.
It looks substantially lower here on the mock-up. Like, it looks like half the height. So it looks like if we're calling this edge 10 feet here before the notch, the center field notch, it looks like 5 feet from this mock-up.
Right.
But again, it is just a mock-up, right? So if it's 7, we'll trust them at 7. Give me 7 all the way around. Like, I don't know. We've got this little raised, it looks like another 1.5 or 2 feet above the bullpens on each side. It's this little transparent wall where I guess the bullpen can watch the game because they'll be risen up. I don't know. I don't like it.
So this is a 3-year renovation, and everything we've talked about is what's happening this offseason. So they're raising the bullpens up, they're lowering the center field wall, they're dead center, hiring the wall where there's the raised bullpens and it's pushed out into the outfield. And then on top of that, all of the 500 level seats that have been in this park since 1989 are going to be replaced, which I love.
Cup holders?
They're better damn well be cup holders. Listen, obviously we can't blame the Blue Jays for not having cup holders in 1989. How were they to know that people would drink soda and beer in the 500 level? But now that the future is here, give us fucking cup holders. Like, what are we doing? I can't believe this is the thing that I'm most upset about, but I love watching the games in the 500s. And man, when you're paying $13 for a beer and kicking one over, like,
look,
that
when
hurts, man.
when your beer costs more than your seat did, give me a frickin' cup holder for it.
Give me a place to put it. Exactly. And there are other renovations going on, but they haven't announced the plans for phase 2 and phase 3. But what is interesting about these renovations is that Rogers Center has come out and announced that they are putting a bid in for the 2026 All-Star Game, which is very cool and long overdue. Toronto has not seen an All-Star Game since 1991. So the Sky Dome at the time was 2 years old, and that was one of the reasons why Major League Baseball came in, and they wanted to showcase this new state-of-the-art retractable roof stadium, the first of its kind. And since then, it's been known as a bit of a bomb shelter, more of a cement bunker feel to it. But these renovations are really going to open it up and, as Mark Shapiro says, increase the fan experience. So it's kind of cool. I hope they land this bid.
What else can we say? Lower the outfield wall. I want to see more home run being stolen, but otherwise it's a step in the right direction. It is certainly more interesting to look at this outfield wall than the very uniform outfield we are currently looking at. So it's cool. I don't think it goes far enough. I like the bullpen bulges. I like that they come in. I would have liked to see more aggressive geometry on that wall.
Yeah. But I do like there's going to be some uniqueness to the outfield now that may benefit the Blue Jays in the long run, because the outfielders are going to be able to learn how to play that outfield properly, and it might be a little trickier to some of the opposing teams. You know, something very similar to the Green Monster in Boston, where, you know, most outfielders have a disadvantage if you haven't played much time in Boston, whereas, you know, the guys out there for the Red Sox, obviously well-versed in it. You know, you see the same sort of thing in Yankee Stadium and the same sort of thing in Baltimore. So it's kind of cool to watch the Blue Jays join that rank of AL East teams where they've got a little bit of a home field advantage when it comes to the fielding side of things.
Not to be a negative Nancy on you, but I think you're giving them too much credit on this outfield wall being a quirky design that will give a home field advantage. I don't see any angles here or any features that are going to give the outfielders a fit if they're new there. I don't see any opportunities for weird bounces, but it is just a mock-up or rendering, so maybe it'll be different. Ugh.
Okay. Negative Ned, thank you so much for stepping
All right.
in there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's get to the next subject, and this is one that you specifically were like, Scott, put this in the show notes. We've got to talk the NL MVP. So that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to let you take the lead on this one. Of course, I'll start it off with Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt. Both looks like they are candidates to get NL MVP votes. Both of them did not make the trip to Toronto because they were not vaccinated, and by far the biggest names to be put on that restricted list and not make the trek to Rogers Center. Tell me how you feel about this, Adam.
Well, I pose it to you as this question. I put it out on social media and got some feedback. But the gist of it is, look, if you are putting, for any reason, and I do really want to stipulate that, like, I don't want to take a stance on the vaccination stat. I don't want to make this a political discussion. I want to, as best we can, isolate the politics out of it, right?
Yes.
But what I want to know is, in all seriousness, should you be an MVP if you put your personal choices, lifestyle or otherwise, ahead of the team's best interest? I think, for me, most valuable player, like, by definition, is someone who puts the team and winning first. So this might be a bit of a hot take overreaction, so feel free to come back at me or in the comments and let me know. But I think if you're not putting the team first and putting winning first to any degree for one game, you should be disqualified from the MVP race.
See, and I kind of like this take. I don't know if I 100% agree, but this is where we were talking about it, and you were like, honestly, if St. Louis makes the playoffs, it doesn't even matter to me because intent is what I'm reading into, which is kind of the way you portrayed it to me.
Yeah, because, look, we had, using St. Louis as the example, 2 games the Cardinals play in Toronto this year, so it's a 2-game issue on the... In this case, it is about vaccination status, right? 2 guys don't want to get it. They've got their own reasons. And again, politics out of it. I'm not here to judge reasons or anything like that, okay? But they've chosen that, you know what? My personal beliefs are more important than those 2 wins that we're going to jeopardize in Toronto, right? And you came back with, well, it is only 2, and like it would be different if Aaron Judge, who has to play like 9 or 10 games in Toronto, didn't get vaccinated because there's just so much more, right? Like that's a 10-game choice. You're sacrificing 10 games. But I don't think that should matter.
I'm really curious to see what the comments are on this. Like, I would love to hear what everyone in the walk-off community feels about the NL MVP, and if you think that Arenado and Goldschmidt should maybe take a back seat to some of the other candidates because of this choice.
Some of the feedback that I've gotten so far from social media were takes like, this is such an old white man opinion to be like, the players just need to shut up and play, like, don't protest our anthems, no kneeling, no whatever. And it's like, I'm not like saying nobody can protest and nobody can have an opinion, right? But like when someone kneels for the anthem, they still go out and play after.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you want to stay in the dugout while we're doing the anthem and take a political stance, cool, but then go play. Right? Like, people aren't forfeiting games. I don't know, man. It's just like, it's such a...
I know it's a divisive thing to talk about, and this is why.
And this is great.
Yeah.
But it should be discussed, I think, and I don't think it's going to get much discussion, but I think it should. Like, whether it's, I mean, the vaccine it really gets people on their side, right?
Yeah, I know.
You're either pro science or not science, and that's not what I want this discussion to be, right? But like, I think Arenado, his excuse is like, well, he's trying to start a family, and is not sure how the vaccine's going to play health and safety of that process. Sure, okay, let's just, even if the vaccine wasn't a case, if your wife is ovulating and she's like, hey, we need to try and create a baby tonight, and you're just like going to skip the game because this is your window to try and start your family, like that, and that's cool. Like, you do you, right? Like, this is the thing, is a lot of comments where, like, athletes should put themselves first ahead of their team. They should put their safety in front of the success of the team, whatever, right? And like, I don't disagree with that, but also that's not an MVP, in my opinion.
And that's a good point. You know what?
Right?
If you're
Like,
going to make that choice, I'm all for you being able to make that choice.
If your daughter is playing in a hockey tournament this weekend, so you're going to skip that road trip out to LA, and you're going to watch and like coach her hockey team or ring the cowbell in the stands for her hockey game. Like, fuck, dude. Father of the year, you're in contention for that. MVP, you're not.
Right.
That's where it comes down to me, right? Like, what if it's, again, to take all the politics out of it and just make it a weird thing? Personal choice. What if it's the season finale of Game of Thrones? I don't want to play this Sunday. Like, is that still an MVP if they just want to take this particular Sunday off so they can, watch the Celtics game? Or I don't know, man. Like, it's like, by definition, a selfish move, whether you could say like it's right or wrong, and whether or not they should be allowed to make a selfish move. Like, I don't think a selfish move is something that an MVP gets to make. Like, that's not valuable to your team. Like, I don't know.
No.
I don't know. I'm interested to see everybody's takes,
disagree.
and I'm sure I'm going to get roasted.
I don't disagree with you, but I am really curious as to see where everyone else stands on this. Okay.
Make for an interesting mailbag on Tuesday.
Yes, it will. I'm sure it will. Absolutely. As if it won't be interesting enough with this trade deadline ever so quickly approaching. Okay, we've got two last things to touch on here before we call this a show. Number one, really, really heartbreaking news coming out of Los Angeles about Mike Trout.
Yeah.
He was diagnosed with a chronic back pain. It is a rare condition, and basically the long and short of it is he's going to need to manage the pain and his back for the rest of his career. And before we get really into this is a 30-year-old man, one of the best ball players, I would argue, to ever even play the game.
Yes.
3 years into a 12-year contract worth $426 million. 9 more years on the books come this offseason. Average per year of $35.5 million annual. $320 million still owing on this contract. This is a heavy hit to the Los Angeles Angels.
This is a heavy hit for baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Generational talent. Man, this sucks. Like, we don't get to see him in October, and now we're gonna see less of him from April through September. Like,
and I mean, we were talking about this a little bit before we hit record, but the truth of the matter is the most responsible thing and probably the way to get the most value out of what remains in Mike Trout's career is to shift him to designated hitter.
Full-time DH. Yeah. I mean,
and at least that way, you can probably get him in the lineup 130, 140 times a year, out of 162.
Yep.
But what this really does, I mean, we just watched them DFA Albert Pujols last year.
Yeah.
and then just
He was
not
their
even
full-time
half a-
DH
He was their full-time DH, and now they're kind of right back in this handcuffed kind of situation where he's not a movable contract, especially now that he can't play center field. I mean, and I'm not saying he can't play center field. Obviously, we're not doctors, and the medical staff with the Los Angeles Angels are going to make the best call and what's right for Mike Trout, I'm sure. However, it only stems to reason, right? The less stress and strain he's putting on this already
diving for
injured
balls
back.
and running
Yes.
around no, absolutely. Yeah, it's that Angels organization has found themselves in a prickly situation. I know you got to get going here in a couple minutes, but do you think that this news is going to impact their decision on Shohei Ohtani and making a move?
It should. It should. Honestly, the best thing the Angels could do right now, and I mean, this might be the best thing they could do even if Mike Trout was 100% healthy. But if I'm the Los Angeles Angels front office, I'm trying to move Shohei Ohtani and package that with Anthony Rendon's ridiculous contract and maybe start over. I mean, this team hasn't made the playoffs. They've done it, once out of the last 10 years? Yeah. Like, my God, I know you don't wish to rebuild again, but what are you doing?
Well, I'll tell you this. As a Montreal Canadiens fan, I've spent many years of my life watching that team refuse to rebuild. They refuse to take a bad year or two and position themselves for success, and rather just like, oh, let's hope we can squeak into the playoffs in that 8th spot, finish 9th or 10th, and are just like never really competitive. And that's like, you have to at some point rebuild, like you said. I don't know. We talk Juan Soto and the Nationals like packaging the Patrick Corbin
Dead weight that is the Patrick Corbin contract,
right? And I think that's, like you said, maybe the way you go with Shohei Ohtani, because the asking price for Shohei Ohtani is going to be astronomical too. But if you throw in a bad contract and you say, hey, if you take this fucking anchor with you, all of a sudden the price tag, you're not giving up, 2 MLB ready players and your top 6 prospects. Now it's like, well, we need one guy decent back who's young and has service time left.
And
we need 2 good prospects, right? And all of a sudden that's a win, right? Like you said, now you can rebuild. It's a fresh start, but otherwise
because
it is bleak. In
like,
LA.
if you look at this Angels lineup, Shohei Ohtani under contract until the end of next year, so he's a free agent in the 2024 offseason anyways, 2023 offseason, I should say.
Yep. If he walks,
are they going to contend next year?
That's the thing, is if they're going to contend next year, that is their one shot, because they're out this year. So they have one more shot, and if not, and he walks, it's like, okay, now you've got Rendon and a full-time DH at $40 million a year.
Yeah.
Fucking good luck building a playoff team around that.
It can't be done.
No. All right, quick.
How deep your pockets are. Yeah, let's
Albert
end on a happy
Pujols
note
appreciation, and then we'll let you go.
Okay, number one, what a 2-week span for a legend in baseball. Albert Pujols. Just a storied comeback in the home run derby to knock out Kyle Schwarber in that first round.
Very cool.
It was just such a fun thing to watching him in the All-Star game, and then he comes to Toronto. He hits that big dinger to win them the game in the second game of that series. And I mean, if you look at his numbers, so these are his numbers over the last 14 games. He's hitting 400. He's got an on-base percentage of 444, an OPS of 1169, 7 runs, 7 RBIs, 4 doubles, 7 singles, 3 home runs, weighted runs created plus of 221. He is having himself a hell of a month of July here.
Very cool. And
couldn't happen to a more influential and nicer dude in baseball. Love to see it.
Absolutely. Nice shout out to the Jays fans in Toronto who gave Albert Pujols a much-deserved standing ovation. So
Twice,
yes. Very cool to
Both
see.
games.
true
Especially
baseball
considering-
fans that recognize greatness. So
And not this is not something that's been happening all over baseball.
no, this is true.
This was a very Toronto specific thing to show some love to an absolute legend. And as a Jays fan, I just freaking loved to see it, man.
Goosebumps.
Absolutely.
All right, let's wrap it up there. Good to see you. We'll see you Sunday
Right
for
back
Long
at ya.
Toss. I'm sure there'll be lots of trade talk over the next 48 to 72 hours. Can't wait to see it. Scott, you got the socials, and let's go from there.
You can follow us on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast, on Instagram, the Walk Off Podcast. Our Discord link is going to be in the show notes. It's always free. You can just follow it from there. And of course, we always appreciate subscribes. So if you're listening to us on the audio platforms, wherever you get your podcast, it means a lot if you hit the subscribe button. And of course, same goes for you watching on YouTube. All the best, everybody. Take care. We'll see you Sunday. Cheers.